It is incredibly brave to take this stance after you've made $300, $400 million not being woke, right? Loving Donald Trump, exploiting the mentally ill, wearing blackface. Look at the crop of woke comics, whether it's Stern or Jimmy Kimmel, his BFF, Sarah Silverman, Joy Behar, Michael Ian Black. What do they all have in common? They wore blackface. And then they went woke. It's not a chicken or egg thing there. You know what order it came. So I call this BFR. It's blackface reparations. There's nothing in Stern's previous career that could withstand this modern witch hunt that he now embraces. So this is a form of restitution. Maybe he says, you know, if I'm woke too, the crocodile will eat me last. But they always do eat. But I get it. He flipped from populist to elitist because now he's with elitists.
That the king of the most misogynistic humor ever now turns into a breathless over a progressive, hopelessly shallow candidate. But maybe that's the explanation. This is Stern's self-imposed penance for subjugating women to demoralizing stunts, capitalizing on desperate females thirsting for attention, even if it's from an oily paddle striking their bare.
Howard Stern was once the beast of the airwaves, bold, wild, and untouchable. But when Greg Gutfeld threw a verbal punch at him live on TV, Stern didn't roar. He froze. No fiery comeback, no witty jab, just a chilling silence that echoed louder than any insult. That moment didn't need chaos. It was the chaos. Gutfeld didn't just poke Stern's image. He torched it with a grin, leaving the so-called king of shock looking lost and painfully exposed. This wasn't just TV drama. It was a media earthquake. Stern, the man who once crushed fake personas, now looked like one himself. And Gutfeld? He didn't hold back. He saw the cracks and struck with precision. Howard Stern, the rebel? Please. Gutfeld sneered, practically begging him to fight back. But Stern sat frozen, stunned in silence.
You should hear what keeps him up at night.
This is what keeps me up at night. I don't understand how my fellow Americans, I don't even understand how this election is close. And yes, I'm voting for you, but I would also vote for that wall over there.
Well, he's half right. We do need a wall. You know, to keep out gang members, fentanyl dealers, human traffickers, and Anna Navarro. What's funny, though, is that Stern actually thought that was a compliment. Stern has become such a wussified sycophant, he doesn't realize that telling Kamala that he'd vote for a wall is telling her that he knows she's as dumb as one.
Stern just sat there, silent, stunned, and suddenly small. The crowd didn't know whether to gasp or laugh. It was that bizarre. Imagine building a legacy by tearing down elites, only to morph into one. That's exactly what Gutfeld exposed. Stern, once the rebel of radio, now clinking glasses with celebrities and preaching from a gilded throne. It was like watching irony perform a stand-up routine. Fans weren't just let down, they felt duped. The same man who once mocked Hollywood's phoniness was now posing for selfies at A-list parties, whining about how exhausting it all was, as if brunching with Jennifer Aniston were a hardship. Gutfeld didn't hold back, smirking. Walking from your wine cellar to the tennis court isn't suffering. And the crowd erupted. That wasn't a joke. It was a reality check. What Gutfeld delivered wasn't noise. It was precision, like a mirror slicing through the image Stern had built, showing the truth he didn't want to face. Years ago, Stern would have erupted, burned down the set with rage. But this time, he looked more like a tamed talk show host than the wild voice that once made the FCC sweat. Gutfeld didn't need to raise his voice. He let Stern's silence be the knockout punch. "This is what rebellion looks like now?" he scoffed, and that line landed like a hammer. Stern walked straight into his own takedown, and by the time he noticed, the damage was already done.
But that's how Stern can call snacking with celebs at a fancy restaurant exhausting. Exhausting. Like he finished the overnight shift in a coal mine, or hearing Kat talk about her pets.
Fair.
But I get it, life is tough, especially when you've been cut off from the world for 2 years in a $20 million beach house. I mean, you have no idea how tiring it is walking all the way from the wine cellar to the tennis court and back.
Stern used to thrive in chaos, wearing controversy like a crown, roaring through airwaves without fear. But now, he looked like a man desperate for approval from the very elites he once ripped to shreds. The shift wasn't just surprising, it was tragic. Once upon a time, the old Stern would have destroyed someone like the new Stern. That version would have shredded this polished, polite clone without blinking. But that fire, the one that made him legendary, was nowhere to be found. Instead of unleashing shockwaves, Stern now tiptoes. Instead of provoking, he praises. The king of outrage had swapped his throne for a table at Naboo. Gutfeld couldn't believe his eyes, and neither could the stunned crowd. This wasn't the rebel who rattled power structures. This was a pampered insider trying to fake an edge. And the worst part? Stern didn't even seem aware of how far he'd slipped. He sat through Gutfeld's takedown like a neutered lion, docile, defanged, and tragically oblivious. Gutfeld didn't just call out hypocrisy, he uncovered a total collapse. The man who once scorched phonies had turned into one, smooth and sparkling under Hollywood lights. It wasn't a clash, it was a silent surrender. No fire, no fury, just the bitter truth that the crown no longer belonged to him. Gutfeld didn't just go after Stern, he dethroned him, becoming the voice unafraid to speak raw truths, while Stern faded into background noise. And that silence, it wasn't calm, it was the sound of a legend breaking under the weight of his own comfort.
I will say this, Dagan. I thank God for Howard Stern because he does make me feel normal by comparison. Because I'm like the Fox recluse. I don't do anything. I don't go anywhere. But he makes me look like, you know, Pete Davidson on a...
Yeah, he's a germaphobe. Like, his wife rescues cats. That's her job, apparently, her thing. But you can get toxoplasmosis.
That's true.
Cryptosporidiosis.
AIDS.
And
no, you can't.
No,
but
you can't get.
No, you can't.
But you can get.
I mean, what are the chances I get that again?
Like a lot of diarrhea related.
You could feel it in the air. This wasn't just another TV segment. It was a turning point etched into history. While Stern lounged in his mansion, clinging to the ghost of old fame, Gutfeld was out in the trenches, crafting a new empire with raw truth and ruthless clarity. The throne wasn't stolen, it was left behind. And Gutfeld didn't hesitate. He marched in and took it. The audience didn't just watch, they were witnesses to a fall from grace that unfolded in real time. There was no shouting, no chaos, just the sharp sting of truth, wrapped in sarcasm and broadcast live to millions. Some moments in TV disappear in a blink, but this one, it branded itself into pop culture like a scar that refuses to fade. It wasn't just Gutfeld humiliating Stern, it was one era eating another alive, and Stern knew it. The discomfort on his face didn't need a close-up, it radiated like sweat under studio lights. The man who once ruled the mic now looked like he wanted to vanish beneath it. The irony hit hard. Stern, who built his brand mocking celebrity phoniness, now was that awkward polished shell of a man. Gutfeld didn't have to exaggerate. He just pointed and said, "Look," and what we saw was devastating. A legend unraveling, stripped of everything that once made him fearless. Stern hadn't just lost touch, he'd abandoned everything he once stood for. The rebellious outsider was gone, replaced by someone chasing the approval of those he used to offend without mercy. And Gutfeld made sure the world saw it crystal clear. Then came the knockout blow. Clips of the clash exploded online, and the internet did what it does best. It turned a moment into a movement.
On his radio show, Howard Stern defended wokeism, saying it's a compliment when someone calls him woke. Listen.
If woke means I can't get behind Trump, which is what I think it means, or that I support people who want to be transgender, or I'm for the vaccine, well, dude.
Stern got even more pathetic, wondering how she doesn't nap.
When you said you don't nap, I get it, because like what you've taken on is extraordinarily difficult. And I mean, do you feel the pressure of the moment in the sense that, like when I met you out in the hall, I said, I'm really nervous because I want this to go well for you. I want it to go well for the country.
Gutfeld didn't need to raise his voice or swing wildly. He delivered every word with razor-sharp precision. And once those words hit the air, the internet exploded like gasoline on fire. Viewers didn't just laugh. They nodded with a jolt of recognition. This wasn't new information. It was a buried truth finally dragged into the light. Stern's slow shift had been obvious to many, but Gutfeld made it impossible to ignore. And it wasn't just anyone calling it out. It was a fellow rebel, someone who'd carved his own path by staying raw, bold, and dangerously unfiltered, everything Stern used to be. People had whispered about Stern's change for years, but this moment, it blew the whole lid off. Even his most loyal fans were left speechless, struggling to explain what once would have been unthinkable. Gutfeld didn't just bruise Stern's ego, he exposed a deep crack in the foundation of his legacy, a contradiction that could no longer be hidden. This clash wasn't about left or right, it was about real versus fake. And in that arena, Gutfeld brought the heat, while Stern sat frozen. Once known for speaking harsh truths no matter the cost, Stern now seemed like a man too polished, too cautious, too comfortable. And as the clip went viral, racking up millions of views, the message was undeniable. Stern's silence wasn't dignity, it was defeat. The man who once made headlines with every sentence now had nothing left to say. His defenders scrambled, claiming he had matured or grown out of shock radio. Well, but the viewers weren't fooled. They saw through the soft lighting and celebrity charm. This wasn't growth, it was disappearance in plain sight.
But Stern being holed up in his house that long, it explains a lot of things, like how you forget how other people live, especially in hard times like a pandemic. For the longest time, 2 years in fact, the same time Stern's been AWOL, I wondered where he went. Not physically, but mentally. I bet you did too. Remember his screeds about COVID? They were epic and angry, and not to mention wrong.
When are we going to stop putting up with the idiots in this country and just say, it's mandatory to get vaccinated? F them, f their freedom. I want my.
What made everything sting even more was Stern's silence. Complete and shocking. No fiery monologue the next morning, no trademark rant, not even a snarky jab. The same man who once shredded presidents and bulldozed celebrities now sat quiet, as his empire was dismantled in real time. And that's what cut deepest. Gutfeld didn't win with noise, he won with brutal honesty. One clean, undeniable truth sliced through 1,000 shock jock gimmicks, and Stern missed his moment to strike back. The king of controversy, once feared for saying the unspeakable, suddenly looked scared to offend anyone at all. It wasn't just a shift, it was a total vanishing act. And while Stern faded, Gutfeld surged. With every awkward pause, every dodged response, Gutfeld gained ground until the media landscape quietly tilted in his favor. By week's end, the story had flipped. Stern wasn't an icon anymore. He was a cautionary tale of what happens when rebellion is traded for relevance. The internet pounced, memes exploded, headlines screamed, Stern goes soft, and Gutfeld takes the throne. It wasn't just a takedown, it was a digital funeral for the old Howard. Gutfeld's strategy was ruthless. He didn't deny Stern's past greatness, he praised it before contrasting it with the bland figure now schmoozing with elites. That's what made the sting so brutal. It wasn't denial, it was disappointment. People remembered the Stern who mocked the Oscars, challenged authority, and reveled in outrage. But now he was nervously flattering politicians, terrified of backlash, and shrinking under the spotlight he once owned. Gutfeld wasn't done. He dragged out more contradictions, pointing to how Stern once joked about anything, no matter how dark, but now flinched at satire like it was a ticking bomb. It felt like watching a revolutionary trapped in the body of a red carpet host. Even the tone of Stern's recent interviews betrayed everything he built. Gone were the wild, risky questions, replaced by soft praise and celebrity bootlicking. He wasn't attacking the powerful, he was catering to them, feeding their image, and asking for approval. Gutfeld knew the symbolism. This wasn't just mocking a peer, it was the burial of a generation's voice. And instead of fighting for his place, Stern retreated into comfort, style, and surface-level smiles. The rebel had retired without warning, and people felt it. Not just fans, but every viewer who once rooted for rawness over polish, fire over fluff. Stern had become the very thing he used to tear down, a safe, predictable, stage-managed brand, and the shift wasn't subtle, it was staggering. The man who once lost sleep over pushing the line now tossed and turned over election polls and A-list approval. The transformation wasn't just sad, it was revealing, one of the wildest moments. When Stern, in an attempt to show off his political support, told Kamala Harris he'd vote for that wall over there, completely unaware he was likening her intelligence to a slab of concrete. retreat. That wasn't bold. It was tone deaf. Gutfeld didn't even need punchlines. Stern was handing him the material on a silver platter. The man who built a legacy by mocking hollow fame now lived inside the plastic palace of showbiz hypocrisy, guarded not by truth, but by PR agents and cocktail parties.
I watch them on Saturday Night Live with the where they have Maya Rudolph playing you. I hate it. I don't want you being made fun of.
Oh my God.
There's too much at stake. I believe the entire future of this country right now, I mean, as America, land of the free, home of the brave, I think it's literally on the line.
So a guy who's supposed to be funny for a living now claims her candidacy is too important to joke about. This is a guy who once joked right after the Columbine massacre that the killers should have raped the students before killing them. Not that I like that, Stern, but this pendulum swing from saying the most tasteless thing in the universe to putting your balls in a Tic Tac container. You gotta wonder what's going on here. It's striking that the king of the most misogynistic humor ever now turns into a breathless over a progressive, hopelessly shallow candidate.
The truth didn't need bells or whistles. It just needed to be heard, and Gutfeld gave it exactly that. A stage so massive, the echo could be felt across the media landscape. He didn't come in with fury. He came in with focus. With every word, he held up a mirror to Stern, revealing just how far the former rebel had drifted from his roots. No one in the audience needed persuasion. They'd seen the transformation themselves, and now it was being aired in high definition. The most painful part? Stern genuinely believed this shift was growth. He thought being soft-spoken and agreeable meant maturity, but all it really meant was he gave up the power that made him dangerous. He didn't evolve. He surrendered. Gutfeld's goal was simple. Remind the world of who Stern used to be, and he did it with surgical precision. He didn't need to rant. He just laid out the facts like a before and after display that couldn't be ignored. And the punchlines? They weren't just jokes. They were revelations. The guy who once joked about Columbine now thinks satire's too harsh for America? Gutfeld scoffed, and the silence that followed hit harder than any insult. That wasn't a comeback. That was a collapse. Stern hadn't grown. He'd erased everything that made him matter. He dulled his edge, polished his tone, and served up the safest version of himself to fit in with the very world he once attacked. But what he didn't realize was that his fans never wanted safe. They wanted the truth, no matter how messy it was. And when Stern stepped back, Gutfeld didn't just walk in. He took the spotlight, lit the stage on fire, and made sure the world saw who was still brave enough to say what others wouldn't. And in that test, one man stayed loud, raw, and fearless, while the other quietly faded into the polished silence of fame.
Happy Friday, America! Oh man, tonight is a special night. It's Feminine Friday, where all the panelists are women. Tonight we have Kennedy. Yeah! David McDowell. Kat Tim. And Janine Garofalo. All right. A long way for a meat joke. Okay, I hope you had a good week. I did, and no thanks to Howard Stern. True, the New York Post reported that Stern hit a chic restaurant in NYC with a crew of A-listers, including Jimmy Kimmel, Jennifer Aniston, Jon Hamm, Justin Theroux, Jason Bateman. I was not invited.
Gutfeld still has the spark, and Stern gave his away, slowly, painfully, in exchange for applause from people who never truly valued him in the first place. When Stern complained about being exhausted after a celebrity dinner, the public didn't sympathize. They cringed. Exhausted from what? They asked. From sipping wine in silk robes. From pretending to be edgy while obsessing over party invites and press coverage. Even his most loyal fans saw the shift, and it broke their hearts. The lion of radio had turned into a pampered lapdog. The man who once roared through the airwaves now whispered about his troubles walking across his mansion. It wasn't satire, it was sad. And Gutfeld, with just a grin and a few cutting words, exposed the truth. Rebellion isn't about who you know, it's about what you're willing to risk. You can't be edgy while tiptoeing through Hollywood, afraid to offend. Stern's silence after that segment wasn't classy. It was hollow. No spark, no retort, no defiance. Just the quiet retreat of a man who used to crush giants, now shrinking at shadows. He didn't just drop the crown, he handed it over. This wasn't a spat, it was a symbolic funeral for a public image that once defied everything, now desperate for a seat at the safe table. No matter how Stern tries to soften the story, the world saw it unfold in real time, and they won't forget. It was a reckoning in real time, when the court jester turned to the king and said, "You've become the punchline," and the king couldn't deny it. He bowed his head and let it happen. Gutfeld didn't just criticize, he replaced him. He didn't scream, didn't shock, he simply told the truth, and the world listened. In a media world starving for something real, Greg brought what Stern had left behind, and now the spotlight is shifting. Stern is slowly fading into the background, a former rebel who traded his raw voice for reputation management. Meanwhile, Gutfeld holds the mic, fearless, fiery, and louder than ever. Because when it's all said and done, the world won't remember the ones who whispered in fear. They'll remember the ones who shouted the truth without flinching. And on that night, it wasn't Stern who stood tall. It was Gutfeld, standing proud, unmoved, and unmistakably in command.